Let's talk about survival rifles and whether or not iron sights or optics will be the best for a survival rifle. There are two sides, of course. Some people are hardcore towards optics, some people are hardcore towards irons. It's one of those subjects that, I don't think you can necessarily be wrong unless you get something that's just not of good quality and breaks. And that could be applicable to optics or iron sights. So I think, first off, as long as you got something that's of decent quality and decent strength, no matter what you choose, it'll work just fine. But I'm going to kind of explore both sides here real quick and just go over a few things. So first off, let's talk about irons. Now, when you think about a survival rifle, you have to define what survival is. Is it a survival rifle in the sense that you get lost in the woods for a couple days, or are we talking, end of the world as we know it? So you need something that will last, hopefully, your lifetime, however long your life would end up being in that type of situation. So, you have to kind of define for yourself what survival means. So, in regards to iron sights, I think that, those are typically what people would go to, and for good reason. Iron sights are very simple. They're robust. They don't need batteries. Once you have them set up, if it's a good pair of iron sights, once you have them set up, then they're set up. You don't have to worry about losing zero for the most part or anything like that. Just like these iron sights right here, they're from UTG, but they're extremely strong. So they're there, and you're not going to lose zero no matter how much you bang around this gun. So, what are some downsides to iron sights? Well, if your vision isn't really that great, or your deteriorating vision, that could be an issue. Low light could be an issue with iron sights. Now, the workaround to that is having a light on your gun as well. But again, depending on what you define as a survival rifle, if we're talking about you need to have some sort of stealth and engage from the darkness, and you're not really wanting to give your position away by shining a big bright light, then, iron sights could still be a detriment. Now, as far as aftermarket, how can you upgrade iron sights? There are some upgrades, and even for AR-15s and such like that. So you can take iron sights and you can get the Trigicon little tritium front sight post and tritium rear. In my experience, the tritium rear peep isn't that noticeable unless you get your head away from the peep a little bit, but that's not how I shoot. I shoot nose on the charging handle or right behind the charging handle. So I don't really notice the rear tritium inserts. The front insert I can pick up at night, so that is a plus right there. So you can upgrade your iron sights. There is a way to do it, and I think that's not too bad. But one thing is, if you're upgrading your iron sights and you put a tritium front in there, keep in mind it's going to be a little bit of a wider front post, and that may take away from your fine accuracy a little bit. There's also different iron sights that you could put on, especially when we're talking about these AR-15 sights right here. You could put a finer front sight post to get a little bit better accuracy and whatnot. There's different types of rear peeps that you can get. There's all kinds of stuff that you can do, so you can really fine tune it. You can even have a fiber optic front sight on an AR-15, so that way it picks up any ambient light. So if you're in a cloudy situation or a low light, it'll help you there. So there's things you can do to help out with the irons. But at its base, the irons are something that's extremely simple, extremely robust. You don't have to worry about batteries. You don't have to worry about anything like that. There is a little bit of a training curve when it comes to long range type stuff. You can shoot long range, but you have to know how to range really well. And you do with optics too, which I'll get into here, but you have to be able to range really well, and you have to have good eyesight, because if you're trying to pick off something that's at, let's say, 300 yards, 300 meters away, and that threat is halfway behind cover, that's going to be hard to do. It is going to be hard. You got to be able to be really precise and have really good eyesight and get those rounds on in order to hit that target. You may not even see a partially concealed target at 300 yards. You may not even see it at 200 or even 100. Because here's the reality: a lot of people talk about end of the world type stuff and violence and all that stuff. And you should, if you're really serious about that, you really need to change your training around. This is kind of a side point of this video. You need to train around never ever shoot full silhouette targets again. Take those targets, fold them in half, fold them in thirds, so only you have a small portion of the head showing, you only have a small portion of the shoulder showing or whatnot, and then take that target and put it at 100 yards and see if you can hit whatever's available to you. That's going to be a little bit more realistic, because that really changes things, and it really pushes your skills when you start doing that. It's one thing to shoot at full silhouette targets at whatever distance, but that's just not the reality. If you're doing the whole prepping thing and you're trying to train for engagements with marauders or zombies or whatever on your land, then you need to train accordingly. Stop putting full silhouette targets out in the open. Put them behind cover. Make them very small. Make it so only partially the head shows, or a hand or a shoulder or something like that. Then try and engage that at range and see how you do. Anyway, well, that was a little side point. But anyway, the irons, very robust, but there are some, when it comes to distance and low light, there are some limitations with that. So let me move this out of the way, because that was my iron sight deal. So now let's talk about optics. So optics, it kind of ranges. It's kind of a broad spectrum. Optics could be red dot, could be LPVO like this, a 1-4, which is for Monstrum Tactical. G3, quick little plug for those guys. Check these guys out. This is an awesome LPVO for budget priced. I encourage you guys to get a hold of them, let them know I sent you over. They make good stuff. I really, really like this thing. So in any case, LPVO, or you can have a standard optic, a standard scope like the 3x9. Those are the real common ones, 3x9, 4-12, 6-20. There's all kinds of different magnification levels. So this is kind of just broad, as best as I can, just broad going over optics. So one thing that could be a detriment to optics is how well it holds zero when it's bumped around. Most good quality optics these days, that's not too much of an issue. Another thing to look at is, do they require a battery to work or whatever in order to have a working reticle or a working red dot or something like that? And if so, you have to think of, okay, Murphy's Law usually comes into play, and batteries tend to go out whenever you least want them to. So either through use they go out, or they go out because they maybe they got wet, maybe your battery compartment got compromised somehow, and now some water got in, moisture got in, and it just messed up your battery or whatnot. There's a lot of different reasons. So for a battery, as long as it's working great, then it's awesome. You have an awesome dot, you have an awesome reticle. That is definitely a plus, because it makes things easy. It's easy to shoot close quarters. Even with an LPVO such as this one, I can bump it down to 1 magnification, because this is a 1-4, and it has a lit center reticle. If I bump it down to 1, that lit center reticle almost becomes like a pseudo red dot, and it's really easy to get on fast with the target at close range. So there is a plus until something goes bad with the battery. There are optics with Tritium Inserts, and that's a plus for extreme low light, or I should say no light. For extreme no light applications, that could be a plus right there. I really dig that. I don't know how you would find yourself in those situations or how often that would be. That again comes into what's your definition of a survival rifle. What are you training yourself for? As far as magnification goes, if it's a fixed magnification, like a 4-power fixed, that's a plus in the fact that a lot of the 4-power fixed, like the ACOGs and stuff out there, are very robust, very clear glass, and it's kind of the best compromise between short and long range. It covers a big piece of the pie there, but you have to train a little bit when it comes to short range as far as being able to use one effectively. A variable magnification is great as long as the optic is in good quality. If it's in good quality, it's good to go. You just have to remember to move it back and forth. It's great if you want to engage a long-range target. You slam it up to 4 or 8 or 9 or whatever your max magnification is. Do what you need to do. But then when you're done, if you're going back into a close quarters type environment, you have to remember to turn that magnification back down. So it's a little bit of training on your end. As far as fog up and whatnot, as long as the optic is pretty good in quality and you don't bang it around too much or damage it, then you shouldn't have to worry about fog up too much. But that is a thing that you may have to worry about. Depending on what type of optic you have, there could be a bulk issue. This rifle is still well balanced, but this is heavier than just running the standard iron sights like what you see on this one. So there is a weight issue and a bulk issue. Just depends on what you have. You have to look at that. It's almost like a trade-off. There are some minuses when you start looking at optics, because you have to worry about mounts as well. You have to have a good quality mount. You have to make sure the mount doesn't come loose. Either at the mount to the gun or the mount to the optic. You got to make sure your optic is level. You have to make sure your batteries are good if you have them, all that stuff. But what you get in return is an awesome shooting optic. For example, this LPVO has a bullet drop compensator on it. It's matched out for 223, 556. It's not specific to a specific load, but it's a good starting point all the way out to what I believe about 800 yards. I can get some dope on this rifle depending on the ammo, and I can at least get very, very close to my target without having to worry about changing any magnification or anything. That's a great thing. So that really is a good plus to have. I just have to look at this particular setup. I don't have any backup irons. That might be the best way to go, is have some backup irons, but that's something that's up to the person or whatnot. As far as low light and no light, if you have again, like I was saying, if you have a tritium insert, that's great. If you have a battery with different levels of power as far as the brightness of your reticle, that works great for low light and no light. Again, just with the battery, you have to plan for the worst. Batteries do go out. One thing I recommend, if you're going to get like a magnified that has a lit reticle, make sure you have a type of optic that can still you can still use without a battery, so the reticle is still good and it's still there. It has an etched reticle or whatnot, and back that optic up with a light, because kind of the same applies. You shine a light on, then everything is nice and bright on the optic. So as far as which one is better, here's my thoughts. Now, first off, I don't think you're going to go wrong. I kind of talked about both of them, kind of some plus and minuses with both of them. And my thought is, number one, overall, for what I'm going to tell people before I give my honest opinion, for myself, what I'm going to tell other people is, whatever you choose, just make sure it's good quality and you have a backup plan for it. So you think about, okay, what happens if this happens? What happens if one of my iron sights fall off due to damage or something? What happens if my optic quits working? Do I have a backup? Am I still going to be able to use the rifle? Think about that sort of thing, kind of develop a plan. And sometimes a plan is not to have a plan. Sometimes the plan is, hey, this is my end of the world gun. If it becomes unable to use, I will pick up another one on the ground, which there will probably be rifles on the ground. That's just the way it is. So that's what I tell other people. My own opinion, if this was if I was going to go with a rifle and possibly not have any type of logistics or anything, it's going to be one of two choices. It's either going to be iron sights like this one. Out of these two rifles, if I had to head out the door and never come home again, and I was going to live in the woods and whatever, I don't know, run away from the zombies, it would be this thing. Knowing that my battery life and my flashlight is limited, so there'll be a certain point where that flashlight will become useless, and that's fine. My irons will still be good to go. That's what I would take. Or I have another rifle that's set up with a good TA01 ACOG with irons on top. It's a very good setup. That's kind of my fancy rifle. I would probably take that as well along with this. Or if I had to choose between the two, honestly, I probably would take that one, just because I know the ACOG is extremely well made and it's really hard to break those things. It'll still function very well once the tritium wears out in another 5-10 years, what have you, and I won't have any issues. So it's either one of those for me, but you have to kind of look at what you define as a survival rifle. It's just something you take with the woods with you. to protect against bears and stuff until you go back home. Then just throw whatever you want on there. It's fine. Just make sure you got extra batteries and stuff in case Murphy Law decides to pay a visit. So anyway, leave comments below. Let me know and let everybody else watching know what you would do. There's a lot of different sighting systems out there, and this kind of it was kind of geared towards the AR-15s, but it could be applicable to anything, any type of rifle you have. So just kind of think about it, throw in your opinions, so that way people can look at your comments. I think your comments are really important, so feel free to comment away with what you think and you know what you agree with, what you disagree with, all that good stuff. All right, thanks a lot for watching. Stay safe and stay sane.